Freedom fans. It's Aaron. I'm here with Caitlin.
Hello.
She runs all of our marketing for the Freedom family of companies.
Yes.
I'm the general manager here, the CEO of the Freedom family of companies. So we're going to be talking today about different types of real estate investors in terms of how involved they are. The passive real estate investors, the semi-passive, semi-active real estate investors, and the control freaks. I'm doing it all myself,
Yes.
right? I've been that guy. The active investors, right?
Right.
And then so there's a number of different ways that you can invest in real estate, from just your money and nothing else, to money, time, attention, a little bit of effort and skill, to I'm doing it all myself, hands-on.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll get into a little bit kind of deeper explanations of each of those, and I'll share some of my own experiences as well.
I'm excited to hear them.
Are you?
Yeah, I am. I love hearing real stories. I don't know. I've
done a few of them.
Yeah.
I've not done a lot of, not a lot of passive real estate investment. Mostly semi-active real estate investments, and then a couple of clunky, really active real estate investment moves that I made early on. It was great for learning, though.
I feel like that's where a lot of people start, is active, which is very hands-on, based on to the people that I've talked with and who I've worked with. Most tend to start with active and kind of work their way through to passive. Not all the time, but like I said, just in my experience. And an active investor, like you kind of got into, is someone who is very hands-on. They want to make all the decisions about the property, and they want to go in and get their hands dirty.
Yeah. I think there's something about knowing exactly what you're buying that after you've done some of that stuff, it gets easier to say, okay, do you do it this way or that way? Okay, cool, go for it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's hard to do that if you haven't swung the hammer, so to speak, or made the buy yourself or whatever.
Yeah.
It's hard to just trust somebody else with those things if you haven't done it. So I can see that. I can see that trend or tendency being real. I think that's what it was for me.
Yeah.
Just the more, I just matured through the process to know a given, piece of work or transaction that needed to happen in the deal, to where I could vet somebody else and trust them with it.
Yeah.
And bandwidth is not a small thing either. Just like at some point you just run out of time and attention.
Absolutely.
Can't be everywhere at once.
Yeah, having that free time, and a lot of it is a huge thing with being an active investor. You have to have a lot of time and attention, and you have to want that time and attention to be able to put into your investment, because it is going to require a lot of that.
Yeah. When I, one of my first, my first experience as a real estate investor was I moved out of a home and I didn't sell it. I just rented it.
Okay.
Right. And so I was an active landlord. I also was an active maintenance guy. I literally took the calls and came over and fixed the garbage disposal. Yeah. Or whatever it was. Right. So I was the guy. I was the maintenance department. I was the landlord. And I paid the bill and whatever else, right? I did all the admin stuff. So that was my first, I guess I just kind of stumbled into it, really, in the middle of this transaction that made sense for me at the time. After that, we just jump right into my experience. Why not, right?
Right.
After that, because I kind of want to talk about how we assess how active or passive real estate investors want to be. I know you've got a kind of a tool for that. But after I kind of had that first experience, I started tinkering around with going out of my way to do real estate investment, right? Okay. And so one of my first intentional real estate investments was purchasing a property through a sheriff's auction that had been foreclosed. And I literally bid on a property just to get the nerves out, because sometimes just kind of doing that first move, like I had done my analysis of how much I wanted to spend, blah, blah, blah. And a property came up and it was on my short list. I was like, maybe I'll just do a bid. I'll just do the first bid, because they never sell on the first bid. Right. I'll just do a first bid just so I can get the jitters of like bidding at an auction, behind me. Right. And so I said, $36,100. Crickets. Oh gosh. And I won the bid. And it was a steal. Honestly, to this day, it was probably the best profit I made on a flip. Right.
Nice.
So I bought that. It was a condo, actually. Bought it, renovated it, rented it for 2 years, and then sold it. So it was a great rental property, and then also a good capital gain on the flip. But it was kind of an accident. I wasn't completely committed to buying that thing. I was really just trying to kind of get the nerves behind me, and then I ended up making a steal of a deal on a really low-cost property at sheriff's auction. But the point to all of that was I needed to experience buying doing the acquisition myself, and I did, and I was hands-on, and then I, did all of the work myself, and then I found the tenant myself. I again did it kind of, and then I sold it myself. So I went full life cycle, all of it, very hands-on. I think I hired somebody to do some painting. Now that I think about it, but
you still had to hire someone.
That's
you
exactly
went through
right.
that.
That's exactly. I didn't have a general contractor doing it or a rehab company doing it. I found that guy, right? So that was pretty active. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the point of screening the tenant, because that is a big portion of it, is putting it up for lease, finding a quality applicant and then, or qualified applicant, and then getting them in there. And then even after they're in there, continuing that relationship with them on maintenance orders or questions they may have. That is very active and involved.
Yeah. I had a background in HR.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I had the unpleasant experience of having to do performance, address performance issues, and I've terminated people before and all that kind of stuff. And there's nothing ever fun about any of that kind of work. It's just kind of like a necessary, difficult thing you have to do. And so it's very similar, I think, to addressing poor performing tenants, where there's nothing fun about telling somebody like, hey, you're late, and if you can't get paid on, if you can't pay your rent on time, you got to go.
Right.
But point to that was I got good at delivering bad news in a healthy and respectful way.
Right.
I had a little bit of experience with that through my day job. And so I was able to say, hey, just, you'll have 5 days, and then we will deliver an eviction notice if you don't pay your rent on time.
Right.
You guys won't have a problem with that, will you? No. So I think being good at delivering the bad news was, now when I think about rentals, I think about a property manager doing that stuff for me.
Right.
And I want to know that they're good at delivering bad news respectfully, right?
Absolutely.
Because you have to. You just can't avoid that kind of stuff. And I'm glad I did it firsthand. I'm glad I did the dirty work so I could kind of like feel the difficulty of it, appreciate the skill set involved in that, and the timeliness, how critical that is, that kind of thing. But, I still remember those tenants, actually. They were really nice people. They were good tenants. Yeah, they lived there for a couple of years, and when they moved is when I decided to sell the property.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like right there, not really like cons or negative, but we're saying like it is a lot of work and it's a lot of hard work and a lot of time and effort. But there's also to go to say with that is because you're doing that, you have a little more say on what you're gonna make your standards.
True.
And what, on your application, what are going to be your qualifications. So you have a little bit more of a leeway there, whereas if you go to property management, they may have their own standards that may be a little different.
That's right. In IPM, we have a qualification standard, right? And so applying a lot of exceptions to this property, that property is doable, but it's obviously more difficult. Whereas I owned one property at the time, right? Yeah. And so I was able to assess those two individuals directly and clearly with a different degree of, detail and attention to details and judgment or whatever than you can when you have, even when I got, a portfolio of a number of properties,
right?
Then you have to kind of have a more formal process. That's for sure. I was happy to hand off that dirty work at some point. Some of that stuff is just like, eventually, you just have to decide. I think this whole conversation about being an active versus a semi-active versus passive is, what do you want to do for a profession? Do you want this to be an investment, a side hustle, or a career? Yeah. Right? And if you really want to be an active real estate investor, then you're running the renovations, you're running the landlord, tenants and stuff. So for me, I decided semi-active's kind of side hustle fit.
Right.
So, that's kind of where I ended up as I progressed through my experience as a real estate investor.
So now some examples of active. We kind of talked about it a little bit. You could do fix and flips, the BRRRR method, and Airbnbs are considered.
I've never done that, but it's fun stuff.
I've recently looked into it just to learn more about it. We don't really do that here, but just kind of exploring different avenues.
We have a lot of our investors do Airbnbs inside. Yeah.
So that is definitely one that is active, and that is more of a shorter term as well, because you can rent an Airbnb for one night.
Sure.
And then you have to turn around and at that next night you got to make sure that it's clean and ready for the next person who's going to be in there renting it for however long for X amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing to think about when you are thinking about Airbnbs, is that is a very active type of investing.
The initial context of the bed and breakfast was, this is my home and part of it will be yours for a short time, right?
Yeah.
And so they were all the original bed and breakfast operators were all active investors.
Yeah.
Literally making breakfast, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then changing bed sheets and doing all the hospitality, the concierge kind of experience or whatever. Obviously, it's become something very different with Airbnb, but there are still people who, even on Airbnb and VBRO and all those services or whatever, are still playing host. Like their basement or their second or their other unit or whatever is decked out, and they're still there to hand keys and give them the intro to the neighborhood and that kind of thing. So even Airbnbs you can do actively. And there are some people who still do as they kind of divide up a single home into a vacation home and their own home. So I've a lot of what we are doing now is engaging passive investors to do syndications, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of what we're doing in FCI is pulling in matured, it's usually bigger investments into more long-term passive investments in real estate. And that seems to be a natural place for people who have done a little bit of, they've owned a portfolio of rentals, they've done some of the semi-active stuff, and they're ready now to just, with their kind of knowledge and expertise of real estate investment, ask the right questions, and then get involved and let the experts do it.
No, you don't, just to say, you don't have to have real estate experience to be a passive investor.
True.
You don't have to. I feel like I said at the beginning, typically, I feel like there is that pattern where they start active and work their way up. But I know,
you're right. There's no qualifications necessarily, right? So
and passive is someone, who they just kind of like want to maybe like fund a deal, like private money lending or something. They don't want to be involved in decision making or having to worry about finding a resident or something like that. They want to be very hands off, and they want to sit back, relax, and collect that cash flow as it comes in.
That's right. I don't know anything about running a social media company, but I own one. As part of a stock or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
There are definitely passive ways to do it without being an expert. If you understand how to assess the opportunities in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you guys do, speaking of assessing, you guys do some assessing. As we get attention and traffic on our website or whatever, we're asking folks about how involved and how active they want to be.
Yes.
What kind of stuff are we asking them to assess that?
Yeah, so on our website, freedomrealestategroup.com, on the homepage, there is a quiz that anyone can take. It's free to take.
Okay.
It's 10 questions. The average time is usually 2 minutes-ish.
Okay.
And there's going to be questions on there like, how much time do you have? Do you have a lot of time or not a whole lot of time? How heavily do you want to be involved in making decisions? Do you want to be involved with like the decisions like deciding on paint colors, deciding on trim you want to do or the floor you want to do? What kind of risks do you want to take? Do you want to take a higher risk or a lower risk but still get some return back? And do you want to manage maintenance like you were kind of talking about? Do you want to be hands-on with that, or do you want someone else to do that? There is kind of like a middleman there as well, which we kind of talked about, the semi-investor. That's kind of the middleman where you want to make some decisions but you don't. So like maybe you want to I don't know, maybe you want to pick the paint colors and all that, but you don't want to worry about screening tenants.
Yeah.
So that would be like an example of maybe a semi-investor. You pick and choose what you do and don't want to do.
Yeah.
And that quiz will be able to, it's not 100% perfect to what is.
Starting point.
Absolutely. And it provides examples. And there's even some links that you can, click on for further learning on certain things. Example of a semi-investor is going to be turnkey real estate investing.
Yeah. You're semi-active. Maybe you're making a decision about a repair or a turn on the property or whatever, but you're not going to be interviewing all of the tenants. You're going to trust the property manager to do that. I kind of broke it down into time, like how much bandwidth do you have? Can you run a whole side hustle kind of thing? Expertise,
yes,
risk tolerance, and availability, right? Because sometimes the water heater leaks in the middle of the night,
yes.
right? Or it leaks when you're in a board meeting, right? Or whatever, right? So if you're not available to take the call, who does?
Right.
So I think all those, I guess it's tier: time, expertise, availability, and risk tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you I don't have a lot of time anymore. So I don't have a lot of time to, to respond to maintenance calls or to even screen tenants, which I was kind of good at.
Mm-hmm.
I have that expertise, but I don't have that time.
Right.
So I got to find somebody else with that expertise who does have that time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The availability, time, expertise is in my opinion, that's a big one. Because at all points in the real estate investment, kind of all the various stages, there are people who know that stuff pretty well. Choosing materials, for instance, like I kind of conceptually know how and what to choose and why, but like our renovations crew, like they already have the stuff picked out.
Right. Exactly.
There's no thought or work that has to go into it because they did it all, and it applies generally to most of our properties, right?
Right.
So why go through that effort and process and whatever else when somebody else has already done it for you, right? So the expertise factor is a big deal for me.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because along with expertise, knowing what is going to be good for a rental type of investment, I believe you and Danny talked about it, you don't need the granite countertops in a rental property. So knowing that you have an expert that maybe can help you on that, or whether you're going through the process and you're learning it, knowing that is good, you know.
Yeah.
And if you have an expert who can handle all that for you and you don't even have to sweat it, that's even better.
Yeah, they say attention is the gold of today, right? Like attention is the most valuable asset in this, highly marketed, everybody's addicted to their phones and their screens and nonstop meetings and calls coming in, texts coming in left and right or whatever. So, when it comes to relationships or when it comes to business or when it comes to your family, your ability to commit attention to a given thing, both in terms of focus and in terms of longevity, is what really separates you. That's what really creates value for whatever you're committed to in your life, whether it's being a great father, in my experience, as an example, or being a great marketing expert, or whatever. Your ability to give attention to it is the value add in that situation, right? So the expertise is interesting to me for that reason, because not having to pick the material, not having to call the tenants and all those things, there's an expertise factor there, and there's also just kind of like a focus factor there that, if you take like Kath, who does all of our tenant screening and that kind of thing, she does it day in and day out. I'm good at it. She's better at it. Yeah, because she's given so much more attention and focus. She's run into the things. You know what I mean? Right. She's learned from all those things. Right? Yeah. So I think committed attention and bandwidth that you give to something is kind of a valuable criteria in determining how active you want to be in something. Yeah. I'm particularly interested in the acquisition side of my personal real estate investments, and then I'm starting to peel away from the renovations part, because I'm a do-it-yourselfer. I like swinging a hammer and that kind of thing. Yeah. So I'm peeling that, but I've completely resigned to giving property management, maintenance, and that kind of thing away, because I think I was pretty good at that, but just the bandwidth, the mental bandwidth, and trusting that other people have all those different functions broken down into kind of skilled expertise areas. And anyway, that's all I have to say about that. That's my rant. Yeah, no, I feel that's a good point, though, because I feel like a lot of times, I'm in the process of buying my first home, and our idea is to live there for a few years and then turn it into a rental, just like you did. Yeah. And so, I grew up in the industry with my parents and everything, so. But something I didn't think about till just now is a lot of people, or at least me, I thought that you acquire this property, you renovate it. If you're an active investor, you renovate it, you do all the grunt work, and then either you're selling it or you are trying to rent it. If you're trying to get it rented, once it's rented, it doesn't end there. It keeps going on. And so that time, for me, I would think is the biggest thing that I would be asking myself is, do I have the time and attention? And if I do I want to give up that time and attention? I don't have a family right now, but if I did, that would be a bigger question to me. Whereas right now,
I don't. So I'd be like, okay, yeah, I can.
You don't have a family, but you still have a social life, right?
Yes,
so like you got plans on Wednesday night and the call comes in about the roof leaking. Do you want to be calling the maintenance guy and all that kind of, calling the tenant and arranging that? So yeah, I mean, you don't have to have a family to not want to be interrupted and to be constantly available. Mm-hmm. But that's a good observation. Yeah, I think early in my experience, I tended to think that if I can do it, I should. Mm-hmm. That's not always the case.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a first question, and then the second question is, can somebody else do it just as well for a reasonable cost? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and more often than not, the answer to that has been yes, as of late. So I'm definitely a passive, almost passive, semi-active investor at this point. There's not a right or wrong way. Mm-hmm. I think I heard, what's his name? Some people love him, some people. Gary V, you ever hear of him? He's like a marketing guy, kind of a business guru of sorts. He's got a big following. I heard him say something recently about how a lot of kind of billionaire investors and entrepreneurs preach a lot about focus, just doing one thing. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about how he's one of the least focused, entrepreneurs and business people out there. But for him, it's not about optimizing for maximum profit. It's about optimizing for happiness in his life.
Okay.
And he kind of likes being a spaz and having creative opportunities to do a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
I loved the self-awareness of that observation he made.
Yeah.
Because some people just they want to tear up a house and renovate it because it's fun.
Yeah.
Right? Like I wanted to do that for fun. It wasn't because I was the most cost-effective resource to do it necessarily, but I really I did some fix and flips.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed renovating properties for a few months.
Right.
I was happy to get out of it when I got out of it, but I was happy to get into it when I did, and I really loved doing that firsthand for a while. So sometimes there's not a right or wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could be doing various things in real estate for various reasons. It's not always about the best dollar necessarily. So.
And it's not always, like a straight cut answer either. There's multiple different avenues, aside from what we're just talking about here today. Yeah. And investors are coming up with different things and ideas on what to do with properties every day. I feel like you go on to watch TV on Home Garden TV network, you can see all kinds of different things there. Yep. One of the things that you were talking about that sparked interest, we were actually looking at an auction, a property that was going into auction this weekend. We definitely drove onto the property, looked around. It was vacant. It was vacant. And we were excited. We were like, this is going to be our first one to do. Mm-hmm. And for us, it would be more about learning the process and knowing exactly, what it takes and what is all involved in it. You might watch Home Garden TV and it looks very, like I said, clean cut on what's going to happen.
Right. They edit it for that 30-minute TV slot or whatever. Yeah. They cut out the other 80 days or whatever of chaos.
Yeah. And so for us, it was going to be that learning factor. And that is one of the questions on that quiz is, do you want to become an expert on your investment? Yeah. And that was, I'm glad you wrote that down because that was a good point.
Yeah. Getting your hands dirty helps. If that's your objective. Like if you want to learn the things that add up to success or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point, too. Like, what do you want to know at the end of it? Mm-hmm. Do you want to know you made as much money as possible? Or do you want to know how to pick contractors and how to manage a project budget and that kind of thing? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I learned a lot. I remember the first time I got a hard money loan to fund a deal. Mm-hmm. And that when I went through that process, that financing process, was the first time I had to put together a project budget. Before that, I was just winging it.
Right.
So anyway, if I hadn't been a hands-on investor at that stage, I wouldn't have learned those things. Yeah. Right. So.
And just because you do one doesn't mean that that's what you continue to do. Right. Maybe you start with passive and realize that you want to get your hands dirty a little bit, and you try being a semi, and you go to turnkey and realize that you absolutely love it, and you want to get in the nitty-gritty of things. So then you go to active, or there's all kinds of, you can start anywhere and you can change it up at any time.
We serve a lot of first-time investors who are buying a turnkey property. It's their first real estate investment. Mm-hmm. Probably most of our customers are not first-time real estate investors, but a good chunk of them are.
Yeah.
And so, they're coming to us. They're buying a fully renovated property. We move a tenant in, they're cash flowing, right? Like that's their first experience. That's pretty passive. That's fairly passive.
Yeah.
They get pinged with certain dollar amounts or whatever when questions come up about, okay, hey, we had this issue. It's going to cost $600. Could you approve it? So there's a kind of semi-active aspect to it. But it's a fairly passive process. So there's definitely an opportunity for somebody who enters our world that way to then go say, okay, I want to do one next door. And I want to like oversee all of it myself and see what else, see what extra thing I can learn in the process. So
absolutely. Yeah. That was a good point. I love that a lot.
Well, good chat.
Yeah.
We hit the high points, I think, right?
Yes.
Are we winning here?
I think so. And like I said, too, you guys, that quiz is free for anyone to take. It's on our website, freedomrealestategroup.com. It's on our homepage. It's 10 questions, about a 2-minute take-ish, minute and a half, 2 minutes. And you'll get your answer right then and there. Yeah. And then, like I said, there's even, it can direct you to different avenues on further learning on it if you want to, or if you wanted to schedule a call with someone here in our company to talk about these options. Yeah. They would be more than happy to do that. Yeah, there's 3 or 4 different people that you could get in contact with depending on what your interests are. Absolutely. Yeah, good idea. Take the quiz, folks. Take the quiz. All right, like we always say here, invest smart. Live happy. See y'all. Bye. Bye.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific personal or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions and information on this show are not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss.